Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Taimur Shamil. Few days back, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and DG ISPR both did a presser, and that was a damning presser for India specifically. That presser talked about a lot of details about Indian involvement, subversive activities in Afghanistan, and how the Indian officials, diplomats, army personnel have been involved in instigating terrorism and extremism in Afghanistan, and also instigating these terrorists inside Pakistan to carry out attacks inside Pakistan. This was a huge expose of the Indian subversive activities in the region. Baffled by this development, recently Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi tweeted that there were 4 terrorists who were killed in Indian occupied Kashmir, and these terrorists were sent by Pakistan. The whole propaganda, of course, regarding Pakistan. This tweet and Indian narrative was rebuffed by the Pakistan Foreign Office, by Pakistan, and this is very understandable. The thing is that after this dossier, India is baffled by the move, by this development that India is exposed regionally and globally. Its subversive activities, not just about the personnel, army personnel and Indian diplomats, but also specifically the details of the bank receipts, accounts, the way Indian officials have been talking to the BLA terrorists for that matter, that was all exposed. Pakistan rebuffed Indian Prime Minister Modi's tweets and the whole drama and the propaganda that is going on in India at the moment. We'll be discussing about this propaganda and how India is baffled by this development in our first segment. In the second segment, we'll be discussing about Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Afghanistan, and this was a very important visit, official visit. The optics were very strong and important for that matter. Prime Minister's meeting with the Afghan president, with the Afghan vice president, and then there was a photo with the Afghan cricket team. That photo exactly sums up the whole visit and the whole idea of Pakistan-Afghanistan relations. Huge following for Prime Minister Imran Khan himself, and there are common foes and common enemies in Afghanistan, and the enemy is those spoilers who don't want to see peace and stability in Afghanistan and in the region. Those spoilers, backed by India, are the foes and enemies of Pakistan as well as Afghanistan. Prime Minister has said that Pakistan would do everything to make sure that we have peace and stability in the region, but also at the same time there was an understanding, there is an understanding between Pakistan and Afghanistan that the Afghan soil would not be used against Pakistan, and a shared vision document was shared by both states mentioning all the points that were agreed upon. We'll be discussing about that as well. We are joined by our special guest in the studio as well as on Skype and phone. In the studios, we are joined by Dr. Mohammad Shoaib, academic and expert on international relations. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shoaib. On Skype, we are joined by Professor Long Zhengsheng. He's a professor of international relations from China. Welcome to the show, Professor Zhengsheng. And we are also joined by Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi, renowned senior diplomat and former ambassador, expert on Pakistan's foreign policy. I'll start with Dr. Shoaib. Dr. Shoaib, talking about, first of all, the Indian Prime Minister Modi's tweets, sheer propaganda rebuffed by Pakistan, Pakistan's foreign office. Do you think that India is baffled by this development, first of all? You know, the dossier that Pakistan Foreign Office, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Pakistan Foreign Minister, and DG ISPR shared, with the public and with the world. How do you see that?
Thank you, Taimur, for giving me the chance to talk on this thing.
Welcome.
Indian Prime Minister writing the tweet itself tells us something, and it tells that Pakistan's homework hurts. And Pakistan has done a fabulous job in really making it public to the whole world that India is involved in activities in Pakistan. In fact, India has been involved over the years, but this time Pakistan has done good job, very detailed dossier that was shared. And in response, when Prime Minister Modi writes a tweet, we come to know that Pakistan's work has actually hit the target.
Right. So this hit the target certainly, but this propaganda that is going on in India, the idea is basically to demonize the other state. specifically focusing on Pakistan. Do you think that they are baffled by this development, that we actually mentioned the officials, Indian diplomats, Indian army personnel over there who have been working on these terrorist organizations?
They are certainly, but I also think they were not expecting this probably from Pakistan. And as an individual, I really think that Pakistan has been a little late in doing all these things, because if all these things had been done 5 or 4 years ago, it could have been very better for Pakistan. But better late. So this time Pakistan has done it in a clear way, that it has shown the people who are responsible, who are in contact, and who are like financing all the things.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, Professor Zhengshun, talking about this whole propaganda, there was recently statement by the Chinese officials, and specifically Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Li Jianzhao, specifically saying and backing Pakistan, rather appreciating Pakistan in the fight against terrorism and extremism. This statement is very timely and very important. How do you see Pakistan-China relations and this strategic alignment specifically? How do you see it?
Me?
Professor Zhengshun, can
Okay.
you hear me?
Okay, according to Chinese position, that Pakistan is the major victim of global terrorism, and also Pakistan contribute a lot to global fighting terrorism. So Chinese highlight Pakistan's contribution to the world for fighting against terrorism. But Pakistan-China relations is very, always a friendship. So Chinese government always emphasize that Pakistan's contribution and encourage like India, Pakistan to talk each other by peaceful dialogue to
Right.
solve some problems. China, Pakistan, China always defend the reasonable or legal rights of Pakistan in global or international arena.
Right.
So
And-
that's
and-
very important, not only for China-Pakistan relations, but international order and the international for international peace. Not only or selfish interests, but also for international peace.
Right. And Professor Zhengshun, Pakistan and China are working on this mega economic activity, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. While both are working on it, we also see that there are some groups, individuals, probably countries like India, who aren't happy with this development in the region. They aren't happy with China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. In the past, there were several attacks carried out specifically to target China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. How do you see the role of these spoilers in CPEC?
Yeah, CPEC is a very important project for China-Pakistan cooperation, and it's very important for the development in Pakistan. And I think it's very important for the peace and stability in northern, especially it's across the Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. I think it's very important for Pakistan for the stability and the peace in the region. And China always, like always, all kind of means and ways to help Pakistan and the stability. We always against any kind of, I know that Indian always oppose the CPEC, but from Chinese side, it's economical program, not political problem or security or strategic intention. So we always oppose any damage by any other country or groups. So for this reason, Chinese government China will always support Pakistan to protect CPEC.
Right, right. Professor Zhengshun, please stay with us on phone call. Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi, this development recently, Indian Prime Minister Modi's tweet regarding these terrorists, and how do you see this propaganda from the Indian side and this is none other than India's Prime Minister, tweeting about such kind of things, and Pakistan Foreign Office has rebuffed it. Why now this tweet by the Indian Prime Minister? Do you think that India is baffled by this development, the dossier that we presented to the world? Ambassador Naqvi, can you hear me? Right. So, Dr. Shoaib, BLA is also supported by India, and in the dossier that we saw that was shared by the Foreign Minister and DG ISPR, that actually mentioned the whole structure of how raw the Indian intelligence agency has been supporting BLA, TTP, Jamaat-ul-Ahrar and Hezbollah, all these terrorist organizations. Now they have merged under TTP, and they would be carrying out attacks. They have been carrying out attacks in the past, recent past rather, and probably in the future. This whole saga of Indian terror nexus, exposing it, how do you see it, and how is Pakistan going to fight this war against these extremist organizations?
If we go back at least 10 years, we understand we started hearing a word double game, and now we realize that what people think about you actually affects you, and that double game thing actually started hurting Pakistan's reputation. But now Pakistan has responded forcefully to India, because what India has been doing over the years to Pakistan, now Pakistan has also shown its own teeth to India.
Right.
And now we have also shown that India has been actually doing the same thing inside Pakistan, but blaming Pakistan for things that Pakistan has probably not done over the years. And now when Pakistan shows it to the whole world, and next time if anything like this happens in Pakistan, at least Pakistan, when blames India for that, Pakistan's blame will have some substance in the outside world.
Outside world, right. Ambassador Naqvi, talking about this dossier that Pakistan presented to the world, I would say, DG ISPR and Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, how do you see this dossier and this tweet by the Indian Prime Minister? Do you think that India is baffled by this development?
Yes, I think this is something that should have been done long time ago, and we have put the Indians on the mat, and therefore the Indian Prime Minister was obliged to make a counter allegation. But that allegation doesn't hold any water, because the points that we have made have not been addressed at all, and therefore it seems that the Indians are unable to deny or to counter the arguments that have been made in our dossier and in the press conference that the ISPR DG has held. So, you see, I think the Indians are feeling the heat, and this is something that is apparent from their behavior and their attempts to continue to malign Pakistan, which they had succeeded to some extent in the past, because the image that Pakistan had been given by international media was quite negative. But in recent months and since some time back, you know, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Guardian, the Le Monde, German newspapers, Japanese newspapers, they have all started criticizing India. And now there is this big report by the Genocide Watch, which is an international body, which has said that the Indian government is treating its Muslim minority very, very badly.
Right.
So, I mean, Modi can make some kind of allegations, but that doesn't hold much water, as I said, because there is a whole plethora of evidence about all kinds of wrongdoings by the Indian government.
Ambassador Naqvi, please stay with us on phone call. Dr. Shoaib, about this development specifically, the things that are going on in the region. China has backed Pakistan, not the first time, of course. Both countries have very strong relationship. You focus on China specifically. How do you see recently the statement by Li Jianzhao, the spokesperson of China's foreign ministry, backing Pakistan and also appreciating Pakistan's stance on counterterrorism?
China has been very clear regarding Pakistan and Pakistan's sacrifices and Pakistan's role in the war on terror. As you have already mentioned, this is not the first time, and of course this is not going to be the last time as well. But the Chinese also understand that Pakistan's reputations, it matters a lot here, and the stakes are high. And the success of CPEC also depends on Pakistan's reputation, because reputation has a lot to do with business and economic activity in the country. And secondly, Pakistan has recently been just flourishing with tourism and businesses, but the Chinese see it also in a different way, because as the investor has already mentioned, that Pakistan has made lots of sacrifices, and then there is also a limit to influence of Pakistan. So Chinese see it in sort of a mixed way, but they see Pakistan as a now success case in all this.
Right. Professor Zeng Sheng, how do you see the Chinese relationship with Pakistan at the moment, and the recent developments in the region, Bika for that matter? You know, this understanding between, this agreement between United States and India. US is going to give India real-time intelligence information, you know, and that certainly would be either used against China or Pakistan. We know the Indian mentality and India's stance on this whole issue. Then the Quad, we also know the 4 countries having this nexus of military and the military drills in the Indian Ocean. How do you see these developments?
Yeah, recently because of Donald Trump, they want to promote the Indo-Pacific strategy and use India as a power to contain China. We always understand that U.S. intention, but we should know that U.S. the double standards, they cannot give always and pay all means to support India. They want to only use India as a tool to contain China or contain China-Pakistan relations. I think from India's side, they cannot always trust U.S. because now, you know, you have a Joe Biden maybe have some different policies to India. And, you know, recently, you know, it's very different to the Cold War that U.S. cannot give a lot like military or economic support to any allies. They want to get some interest from allies that give the interest or aid to the allies. So I think India and U.S. relations cannot go far like you know the U.S. Japan or U.S. Australia. India just as a power, as a tool for the U.S. By this way, so I think China will always concerned about that U.S. intention in the Pacific strategy. That, but we don't want it too much because we have some very important friends in the region like Pakistan. So that means China will give more attention or highlight China-Pakistan relations to offset U.S.-Indian corporate alliances in the region.
Right. Professor Zeng Sheng, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. We are going to take a break, and after the break we are going to discuss about Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Afghanistan, certainly a very important visit, and the statements given by Prime Minister Imran Khan. We'll be discussing about that, and also about the challenges that are there for Afghanistan, for the people of Afghanistan, and the stalemate that we see between the Taliban and the Kabul government. After this break, stay with us. Welcome back. Prime Minister Imran Khan was in Afghanistan on his official visit. Very important visit, I would say, in terms of Pakistan-Afghanistan relations, and specifically in the backdrop of the regional challenges and the global developments. Regional challenges in a way that there is a stalemate between the Taliban and the Kabul government. There is increasing violence in Afghanistan going on at the moment. Prime Minister Imran Khan showed his concern regarding the violence, and he said that Pakistan would like to see decrease and rather no violence in Afghanistan. And also talking about the brotherly relations of Afghanistan and Pakistan, that was very important. Also keeping in mind that there is a new administration hopefully in United States. Joe Biden is the president-elect of United States, and things would be different probably in Afghanistan and in the region. But that is the question. How would US see Afghanistan in the future? US is going to decrease and reduce the number of troops from 4,500 to 2,500 in Afghanistan now. But what would be the future of Afghanistan, the peace situation over there? We'll be discussing about that. Ambassador Naqvi, how do you see, first of all, Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Afghanistan? Ambassador Naqvi, how do you see, I'll just repeat my question, how do you see the visit of Prime Minister Imran Khan to Afghanistan?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Ambassador Naqvi. Please go on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Taimur? Hello?
I think there is some connectivity issue. Right. Please, I would ask the producer to look into it. Dr. Shoaib, Prime Minister's visit to Afghanistan certainly is very important. The challenges that have been there, I just mentioned. How do you see this visit?
There are visits and then there are historic visits. So I see this visit as a historic visit to Afghanistan, especially coming in a time when the United States is talking about complete withdrawal or partial withdrawal, and then there is also a change in the United States. President Biden is going to take over in January, we hope so. And then for at least last 5-6 years, Pakistan has been trying to bring all the warring parties in Afghanistan to a table. But Pakistan's Prime Minister going to Afghanistan and telling the Afghans that we are interested in peace and stability in your country and we are for you. So this was something historic for Pakistan.
Historic and important for the Ghani administration. Do you see it that way? Because I mean, at the moment, the issue is the credibility of the Ghani administration with the Taliban. Taliban do not agree with the setup that is going on over there. So, Prime Minister going over there, talking about peace and stability, would give also, a push to the peace process in Afghanistan. Do you see it that way?
Yes, and especially when Pakistani Prime Minister is standing next to the Afghan President, it means that Pakistan also trusts the government in Afghanistan. The Taliban might have their own problems, which they of course have with the government, but Pakistan wants all the sides to sit together and work for Afghanistan. That was the message probably the Prime Minister wanted to give.
Right. Ambassador Naqvi, how do you see, I would just repeat my question, Prime Minister Imran Khan was in Afghanistan, his official visit, certainly very important. How do you see this visit specifically?
I think this was very important as well as a long overdue visit, because I think it was necessary for our leadership to establish high-level contact with the Afghan government, especially at this stage of intra-Afghan dialogue, because we have to be engaged with all sides as a facilitator. I mean, we don't have to play any role in their own negotiations or discussions, but we are a facilitator, and for a facilitator it is necessary to engage with the major parties. We are in touch with the Taliban as far as I can make out, and I think we needed to have this high-level contact with the Afghan president. There have been a flurry of activities, in fact, recently, including the visit of Mr. Abdullah and the visit of the Wolsi Jirga, Mr. Rahmani, and also the visit of the Afghan delegations. So I think Mr. Razak Dawood was there. Both sides are now quite frequently in touch and interacting with each other because this is a very crucial juncture in the peace process. Even today there has been an attack in Kabul, which Taliban have said that they have not done it. But the fact that the situation in Kabul is so volatile means that we have to engage ourselves fully with the Afghan government and work towards the continuation of the peace process and eventually success of the peace process. So this is something that is most necessary at this juncture, and I think Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit has served that purpose. He has been able to engage with Afghan leadership and with various people in Kabul who are responsible for major areas of the government. And therefore, Pakistan has tried to do what it needed to do and has offered its services for the continuation of the peace process towards a positive direction.
Right. That's about Pakistan's relations with Afghanistan, Prime Minister visit. But Ambassador Naqvi, how do you see the future of Afghan politics, the violence that is going on in Afghanistan at the moment, and also the future of Ghani administration for that matter? Because Taliban don't accept the Kabul government. There is a stalemate between the Taliban and the Kabul government, rise of violence for that matter. How do you see the future of the security situation in Afghanistan, let's say in the next 6 months or 1 year?
You see, in Afghanistan, government and the Taliban, there are many factions, many groups, many movements and political individuals, warlords and all that, who are all involved in the Afghan situation. Now, this is a difficult time for the Afghan government. The Americans have announced withdrawal of half of their remaining troops, and there has been an election in the U.S. and nobody knows what's going to happen after Biden takes over. But therefore, this is a time where different groups, individuals, and movements are causing trouble there to assert their position, to assert their presence, and therefore this violence is going on. But the serious negotiation in Doha between the Afghan Taliban, the important Afghan factions, is also proceeding alongside. So this is a period of considerable uncertainty and lack of clarity in the situation. So I think Pakistan has to keep an eye on all this and try and steer the peace process towards some kind of positive direction.
Right. Ambassador Naqvi, please stay with us on phone call. Dr. Shoaib, Pakistan and Afghanistan both released a document that was about shared vision. So both have agreed on the shared vision. Although the contours of the shared vision are pretty familiar. I mean, in a way that Afghanistan-Pakistan Action Plan for Peace and Solidarity is there. 6 points of APAPs are there. Contours and framework is the same. But this time, specifically, Pakistan has mentioned in this shared vision that we would like Afghanistan to ensure that the Afghan soil would not be used for malicious purposes, by other organizations, terrorist organizations specifically, they're not mentioned in the shared vision, but I'm just saying, asking this question. TTP, Jamaat al-Ahrar and Daesh, they have been using the Afghan soil. How do you make sure Pakistan and Afghanistan that these organizations do not operate over there, but they have been for the last several years?
Afghanistan's soil has been used against Pakistan for so many times, and Pakistan has actually conveyed the message to the Afghans also. But agreeing on this thing is that Prime Minister visited Afghanistan and probably focused on this point that Pakistan is being affected from your side. And about the actors, they're not only just the organizations like, as you have mentioned, Daesh and Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, but it may be also the external actors like India. So Pakistan also wants to convey this message to the Afghans that if we have to sit together and if we have to exist peacefully, then you have to take care of our interest as well in the region.
Right. And do you think that, let's say, the Afghan security apparatus or the government, they're in a position that they would be able to do it? I mean, in the last couple of years, they haven't taken much action against, TTP and Daesh operating near the Pakistan-Afghanistan border.
Actually, there are two things, capacity and intentions. So Pakistan understands that Afghan security apparatus is not that much capable that it can stop the other organizations, but it really asks for intention at least, that it wants to stop, or at least it tries its best to stop attacks against Pakistan. Probably, as you have already mentioned this thing, that we are now talking about both things, but we understand that Afghan government and security apparatus is weak, but we still want them to try their best.
Right. Ambassador Naqvi, so US is going to reduce the number of troops in Afghanistan from 4,500 to probably 2,500 till January next year. How do you see this development? I mean, US reducing troops, but ISIS, TTP, Jamaat al-Ahrar getting grounds over there. And as we are discussing, Dr. Shoaib also mentioned, we don't see the Afghan government or the security apparatus strong enough to keep a check on these organizations. What is going to be the security situation in Afghanistan then?
You see, from February 29, when the Americans signed a deal with the Afghan Taliban, to this day, there has been a progression towards peace, but then there are all kinds of hurdles along the way. And now, in the very beginning of that deal, and in the very the period immediately following the deal, in the very beginning, there was this problem about this. And, it almost came to a breakdown of the whole arrangement. So, the point is that the withdrawal of the U.S. troops adds to the uncertainty, and the Afghan government is very, very apprehensive of the law and order situation. The first thing is to control the situation. The second is to reach a meaningful agreement with the Taliban as well as the other factions about the future shape of Afghanistan, the constitution, the government structure, and all these things. So this is a whole exercise that is entering into its most crucial phase. Obviously, it is attended more, along with this whole progression, it is witness to all these violent acts and terrorism and attacks. So I think the problem is going to continue in this fashion for some time till there is some shape to the peace process. And that is what Pakistan wants to see reach towards its desired end.
Right. And Ambassador Naqvi, new administration probably in the White House, do you think that the US foreign policy would continue on the same lines specifically regarding Afghanistan and Pakistan for that matter, or do you see any change coming up in the US foreign policy with Joe Biden in the White House?
I would like to think that there would be some better approach and more deft or able handling of the situation by the Americans. But I am afraid I don't foresee that. I think that the Biden administration, in the first place, would be happy that they have got rid of this presence and of their troops, and most of them are back, and they would not want to again reinforce that presence. So the American object has been achieved, and the Biden administration would go along with it.
Right, right. Dr. Shoaib, US certainly has a strong presence in Afghanistan, although they would be reducing the troops. But do you think that this is the responsibility? The security landscape in Afghanistan is also the responsibility of the US troops over there. Interestingly, noting that US said that they support the Afghan security forces. They don't fight the Taliban anymore, of course. They don't fight the other terrorist organizations for that matter, but they support the Afghan forces to fight, let's say, TTP, Jamaat-ul-Ahrar and Daesh. Is US going to take the responsibility while withdrawing troops from Afghanistan?
No, the United States is not apparently going to take any sort of responsibility, because if we look back in 2012 when President Obama said, okay, we are leaving Afghanistan and we are going to have a very responsible end. But we have seen what responsible end looks like in the last 6 years. And I am afraid that Afghanistan is left alone by the United States in coming years. If the Biden administration starts focusing on Asia Pacific and there's a great power rivalry, Afghanistan probably would be left alone.
And
there's
the
a
regional
possibility.
And who would fill the void then? What do you see? How do you see, let's say, the security situation? Or do you think that China or Russia or bigger countries would like to show some presence over there, not in terms of military, but probably in terms of economy,
or probably in terms of influence as well. But in any case, the situation for Afghans would not be very good.
But Chinese influence?
No, the Chinese are not going to come into Afghanistan militarily, and if Afghanistan again suffers from internal warfare, the Chinese would retreat. The Chinese has this style. They would retreat when there's a war, and they would come back when there's peace and stability.
So the main question is, Ambassador Naqvi, that if, let's say, US is withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, they aren't much interested in Afghanistan, rather in the Asia Pacific and what is going on in let's say with China and Quad and BICA. What about Afghanistan then? Right, I think there is some technical issue. Dr. Shoaib, thank you for joining us. Pleasure having you on the show, and I would thank Professor Singh Chung and Ambassador Naqvi for joining us. That's all from today's dialogue. In the end, there is a new wave of COVID that is going on, and we have to be very careful about that. Most of us, we have seen what happened in the previous wave. This is the responsibility of each one of us, every Pakistani, to take care of ourselves and also to take care of other people around us. Observing the SOPs is very important wherever we go, wherever we live. Even in the studio, we are at a very good distance. Me and Dr. Shoaib and other people, our respected cameramen as well for that matter. So this is very important for all of us to take care of ourselves and of others. This is rather, I would say, a national obligation. Thank you for watching today's dialogue. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.